He chose his new family over me. Years later, he needed a favor. The phone screen illuminated in a dim toast and Bugis, the name searing into my vision like a brand. Dad, a ghost from a past I desperately tried to bury, a past that still clawed at my insides with icy fingers. It had been over 15 years since I last saw him. 15 years since he walked out of Shawnee Airport with his perfect wife, leaving 10-year-old me behind like a piece of discarded luggage. The silence was broken with a buzz. My heart hammered against my ribs, and I half expected him to materialize. And now, after all this time, he was calling. Curiosity, a morbid fascination, outweighed my disgust. I answered, "Finally, you pick up. It's been so long." Before he could even finish the wretched sentence, I slammed the call shut, cutting him off from the lifeline of my attention. Rejection was the sweetest revenge in this case. It felt like a victory until a text message popped up on the screen. "Son, I need your help. Blood is thicker than water, okay? Dad, please, can we meet? Just for a bit. Blood is thicker than water." He dares to invoke that bond now. The hypocrisy made my blood boil. I took another sip of my Kobe, letting his desperation marinate for a while before responding. "Are you asking for a kidney or cash?" I typed, the words laced with venom. "Son, it's not like that. I just need to see you. Please, son." Like I was still some clueless kid waiting by the window for his return. The pain of my father's absence still fresh on my chest. I smirked, shaking my head, my blood boiling. Fine, if he wanted a reunion, he was going to get one he wouldn't forget. I agreed to meet, not out of forgiveness, absolutely not, but out of morbid curiosity. I wanted to see what years of karma had wrought on the man who had abandoned me to forge a new life. We arranged to meet at a 24-hour McDonald's near Orchard Road, a public place, neutral territory where I wouldn't have to feel trapped. I arrived 10 minutes early, nursing a Coke Zero, observing him from the inside, watching as he paced near the entrance, his movements a portrait of frayed nerves. I almost didn't recognize him. This wasn't a polished, ambitious corporate guy who had once sneered at my mother for holding him back. His once expensive taste had downgraded to a cheap, faded polo tee and cargo shorts. His hair was thinning, his gut slightly bulging, and his face carried the weight of someone who had lost everything. Good. I let him stew for a bit before finally stepping outside and approaching him. "Son, why? You've grown so much." I raised an eyebrow, my gaze icy. "That's what happens when you don't abandon your kid." He gave an awkward chuckle, the sound grating against my ears. I deserved that. I said nothing, just watched as he fumbled with his words, like he was expecting me to jump into his arms, relieved that my long-lost parent was in front of me. I know I don't deserve to ask this, but I really need help. I folded my arms, a wolfish smile playing on my lips. Must be tough when you can't just leave your problems behind like you did with me. His expression tightened, but he forced a pitiful smile. "My wife and ex-wife now took everything. The money, I have nothing left." I sipped my drink, pretending to care. "Damn, so sad. Anyway, what's this got to do with me?" Lowering his voice, he pleaded, "I need a place to stay, just for a while, until I get back on my feet." I actually laughed, the sound devoid of any warmth. Wait, let me get this straight. You ditched me for your better family, and now you think I'll just open my home to you." I started to laugh so hard that I started to tear up, drawing stares from the other patrons. I didn't care. The level of absurdity of the situation was comical. "Son, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "I'm your father." I reached into my bag and pulled out an old envelope. I held it up between two fingers like it was a dirty item. "Funny, you didn't feel that way when you signed these." I watched him swallow, his Adam's apple bobbing like he was trying to choke down reality. The adoption papers, his signature crystal clear at the bottom of the page, legally erasing himself from my life. For the first time that night, he was speechless. "You made your choice. Now live with it." His lips parted, searching for words, for excuses, for anything. Tossing the adoption papers onto the table like a final verdict, I stood up, my gaze unwavering, and delivered the final blow. "Enjoy your life, uncle." And I walked out, leaving him to drown in the mess he had made. The humid Singapore night air washed over me as I took my first breath of clean air. Walking away from my so-called father felt good, almost too good. People like to say kids are resilient, that they bounce back. But when you're 10 years old and your father vanishes like an unwanted shopping parcel, you don't bounce back, you barely crawl forward. My mother tried her best. She worked long hours at a small accounting firm in Torpeo, but no matter how many extra shifts she took, money was always tight. Rent, school fees, utilities. Every month was a battle. I learned to stop asking for things. No birthday presents, no new shoes when my old ones had holes, just the constant presence of light. And there were the questions, the whispered inquiries that stung. "Where's your father? Why doesn't he pick you up? Why don't you look like your mother?" At first, I lie. "He's working overseas." I tell the curious, my cheeks flushing. "He's busy." But kids were quick and perceptive. And one day I overheard a classmate whisper, "His dad ran away, got a new family." I wanted to punch him, to disappear, but the best I could do was swallow my anger and embarrassment. That night, I cried myself to sleep. As I got older, the anger hardened into something else. Determination. If my father could throw me away like some expired discount voucher, then I would make damn sure I never needed him or anyone else for that matter. I worked part-time at 16, waiting tables, tutoring kids. By the time I was in Polytechnic, I was juggling school and 3 different jobs. I won't lie, there were moments I almost broke. Times when I stared at my empty bank account, wondering if things would ever get better. But the memories of my father's back turning to me and my mother struggling to make ends meet fueled me with a burning fire. There were no fathers to lean on, no safety nets, but I pushed through, driven by a hunger for success that seemed to eat me alive. By my early 20s, I had landed a decent job in marketing. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, put food on the table, and let my mother finally breathe after years of struggling. I built my own life, brick by brick, without him, and now he had the audacity to crawl back, expecting me to save him. That was laughable. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, a new thought crept into my mind, slow burning like a hot coal. What if I could make him see what his life looked like through my eyes? I wanted him to feel everything I felt, the helplessness, the rejection, the consequences of his own selfishness. If my father thought he could waltz back into my life and guilt-trip me into helping him, he had seriously underestimated how much resentment I had bottled up over the years. Walking away wasn't enough. I wanted him to suffer, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I texted, "Let's talk." We arranged to meet again, this time at a cafe in Tiongbaru, a little classier than McDonald's, just to let him think I was softening up. When I arrived, he was already there, fidgeting with a cup of tea, a portrait of desperate need. "Thank you for coming," he said, his eyes shining with false hope. I cut him off, my voice flat and cold. "Let's get one thing straight. I'm not here because I care. I'm here because I want to know exactly how much of a mess you've made of your life." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I told you already. My ex-wife left me, took everything. I got retrenched a few years ago. I tried getting back on my feet, but it's been hard." I sipped my coffee, unimpressed. "So what? You want money?" His face twisted in embarrassment. "Not money, just a place to stay. Just until I get back on my feet." I exaggerated a whistle, pretending to be shocked. "Imagine having no one willing to take you in. Family first, right? I know I made mistakes, but blood is blood. Can't we move forward?" I almost laughed. Move forward? Like he hadn't erased me from his life. Like he hadn't replaced me. I leaned forward, my voice low and menacing. "Okay, I'll help you," I said, watching the relief wash over his face. "But you have to do something for me first." "Anything," he said, too quickly. "I know a guy who owns a cleaning company. He's hiring workers to clean office buildings overnight. You take the job, and I'll pay for your first month's rent." His expression fell faster than the MRT during peak hours. "Cleaning? You want me to be a cleaner?" "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said anything. If you're too proud to do an honest job, then good luck finding a bridge to sleep under." The words were dripping with malice. He swallowed his pride. The word caught on his tongue, but he had no other options. "Fine," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Good. I'll even drive you there on your first day," I said, masking my eagerness. He was probably thinking I'd eventually cave, that I didn't have the stomach to actually go through with this. He had no idea what was coming. Over the next few days, I prepared everything, ensuring he understood the gravity of what he was getting into. The office he would be assigned to work in was known for its cockroach-infested toilets, grimy floors, the works. I also pulled some strings to get his shifts extended to a grueling 14-hour overnight shift, from dusk till dawn. It was perfect. I also had a little surprise waiting for him at his new home as well. He thought he was getting a decent rental and comfortable living quarters. He was in for a rude awakening. 3 days later, I picked him up for his first shift. The guilt and regret of his decision was clear on his face as he declined into my car. I didn't bother making small talk, just to enjoy the silence as he spiraled in his head, probably regretting every decision that had led him here. When we arrived at the office building in Gale, his eyes widened. "This place looks odd," he said, disgust lacing his tone. "Beggars can't be choosers, right?" The words were a knife to his pride. I escorted him inside, where the cleaning supervisor, a friend of mine, was waiting, barely hiding his amusement. "You must be the new guy," my friend said, clapping him on the shoulder with false enthusiasm. "Good. We're short-handed." My father hesitated, gripping him up like it physically hurt him. "You sure there isn't something less physical? Maybe security?" "No." The supervisor and I exchanged a knowing glance. "I thought you were desperate," I spat. He shot me a glare, but didn't say anything. Too humiliated to protest. I left him there, but not before making sure his shift included the worst possible tasks, scrubbing toilets, polishing floors, and everything else he probably looked down on for his entire life. And the best part was the schedule was made to suit my twisted needs. When his shift ended at 5 o'clock, I was waiting outside, a predator lying in wait for his prey. "Let's go see your new home," I said, my eyes glinting in the streetlight. He slumped into the passenger seat, reeking of bleach and regret. "Thank you, son," he muttered, tired to keep up the pretense. I drove him to a rental flat in Easton, a place so run down. Even the most budget hotels looked like Marina Bay Sands in comparison. The ceiling fan made an ominous rattling noise. There was a thin mattress on the floor, which was his bed. "Home sweet home," I said with a mocking smile. "I thought maybe I could stay with you, just for a while." His eyes darted around the room as the dust and grime became more obvious to him. He looked like he was about to break down. I laughed so hard I almost choked. The reality of my father's situation hit me with a hard wave. "You really think I'll let you into my home after what you did? No, this is what you get. This is your home. Son, please," he begged. I stared at him, at the man who had once been too proud to be my father, and now he was nothing. "You abandoned me. Now I'm just returning the favor." I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving him standing in the crumbling remains of his choices. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I had given him just enough suffering to make him understand what it felt like to be discarded. But karma wasn't done with him yet. A week after dumping him in that decrepit flat, I got a call from an unknown number. I usually ignore those calls, but something told me to pick up. "Hello," I said. A woman's voice, sharp and impatient, answered. "Is this narrator's name? Who's asking?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Your father's ex-wife." The news was like a strike of lightning. I leaned back in my chair. "Wow, never thought I'd hear from you. What do you want?" "I want to know why your father is suddenly my problem again." The resentment and anger was obvious. I raised an eyebrow, suddenly very interested in the conversation. "What do you mean? After all these years of ignoring him, suddenly you take an interest. Help him get a job. What's your plan? You think we're going to feel bad for him?" "Lady, I didn't take him in," I said with a cold smirk. "I threw him into the worst possible situation and let him rot." There was silence on the other end. "Figures," she spat. "Listen, I don't give a damn about what happens to him, but he's been calling my kids, begging for money. He told them you were helping, that you forgave him." I nearly choked on my own spit. The audacity of this man was limitless. "And I thought he'd finally learned his lesson," I said, regaining my composure. "Men like him never do. They always think the world owes them something. He told my son he was staying with family, that he was working hard to rebuild his life. But when I found out he was living in a rundown flat in Easton, working as a bloody cleaner." "Yeah," I said, smirking. "That was the point. He deserves it." I leaned forward, tone shifted to be intrigued. "So, what's your story?" "He lost his job years ago. Bad investments, some shady business deals. I tried to help at first, but he started gambling, borrowing money from the wrong people. And when the debt collectors started showing up at our house, I took the kids and ran." "Damn," I uttered in disbelief. "So, he really lost everything?" "Yep." There was a pause before she spoke again. "I don't know what your plan is, but if you're thinking of really screwing him over, I have some information you might like." Feeling something dark stir in my chest, I leaned in closer. "I'm listening." Just like that, I had everything I needed to ruin him completely. She sent me bank records, or debt notices, even photos of the loan sharks to vandalize their house. Turns out after his business tanked, he borrowed money from illegal sources. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. He was still in debt, and not just to a bank, but to the sharks who would come to his house with the intention of inflicting violence. This man had the audacity to crawl back into my life acting like some pitiful old man, when in reality, he was probably hoping I'd be his bailout. I saw my opportunity, and I took it. First, I made sure everyone knew the truth. My father had been telling people that I was helping him rebuild his life, that he was working hard and making progress. His old friends, his distant relatives, I shut that down real quick. I took screenshots of the adoption papers he signed, the messages where he begged for help, and even snippets from Eileen's email, proof of his gambling debts. Then I sent them to everyone he had been lying to, including his ex-family. Mei Ling's eldest son posted it all over social media with a caption that absolutely ended my father's credibility. Funny how blood is thicker than water only applies when you need money. The comments were swarming with hate. "Shame on your father. Shameless liar. I hope he rots in hell." His reputation was destroyed. Next, I reached out to some contacts. Let's just say that if you owe money to loan sharks in Singapore, they don't forget. I had a friend tip them off about his new job as a cleaner. Within 2 days, they found him. He showed up at her doorstep begging for help after some men confronted him outside the office, just reminding him loudly in front of everyone about his debts, how he was going to pay it back, and how he couldn't escape. I kicked him out by having the landlord issue him an eviction notice for his apartment, and for failing to follow the rules as his name wasn't under the lease. I went over one night and knocked on his door. "Son, you started this," he said with a strained voice. I held up the eviction notice and showed him the paper. "You're done. Get out." "What? Where will I go?" "Not my problem," I uttered. He stepped forward like he wanted to beg, but I stopped him with one final strike to the heart. "You left me homeless once. Now, you know how it feels." And just like that, I walked away, leaving him standing in the dark, just like he did to me. I thought I'd feel guilt. I walked away from that dilapidated flat for the last time. I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the abandoned kid. I was the one who walked away, and that meant I could finally move on. I didn't seek justice, but vengeance. I made sure everyone in his life knew about the lies and the debts, a family he abandoned, the life he tried to rebuild on a foundation of deceit. Even Arlene, who had every distant relative, who suddenly felt bad for him to turn on his back. I stayed in touch with her, but even she knew this was the last time we talked about him. We had both moved past the disaster that was my father. I focused on my life, my friends, my mother, the only parent who had ever been there for me. Do you feel better now? Arlene asked me one day, like she already knew the answer. I thought about the years of resentment, and nights I spent wondering if I'd ever be good enough. The constant shadow of abandonment that haunted me. I thought about him and the debt that I had paid off. I looked at her and smiled. Yeah, I do. A few months later, I heard rumors. Someone saw him sleeping on a void deck. Another said he was bouncing between shelters. Some people might have pitied him, maybe even given him a second chance. I simply didn't care anymore. He was nothing to me, just a man who made his choices. And I can finally say that I am now free and happy. So, Reddit, after hearing the whole story, do you think I handled the situation correctly? Did I go too far in seeking revenge? Or did he deserve everything that came to him? Was I justified in using his past against him? Or should I have taken the high road and offered genuine help? What would you have done in my shoes, knowing the pain and abandonment I endured? I'm genuinely curious to hear your perspectives and opinions on this whole twisted saga.